Hello, and welcome to Movers, Shakers, Designers, Makers. I'm Emma Capel, a second-year sophomore here at Penn State University. I am a professional photography major at the School of Visual Arts. And if you have been following this video series, you know that typically Dean Steve Carpenter interviews arts and architecture alumni who are doing interesting things in the arts and design disciplines. But today we're shaking it up, and we will be interviewing him instead. My co-host today is someone I have known my entire life, my father, Brian Capel. He is also a Penn State grad, self-employed designer, and a member of the Arts and Architecture Alumni Society Board of Directors. We are so excited to be interviewing the dean today.
Thank you, Emma. And yes, there's no one I would rather co-host with. I'll try and behave myself for the most part and not embarrass you too bad. But let's get to welcoming our guest who took on the role of Dean at Penn State's College of Arts and Architecture in January 2020. Steve is a Penn State alumnus twice over, having earned a Master of Education in 1989 and a PhD in 1996, both in art education. Dean Carpenter, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat.
Thank you, Brian. Emma, it's great to be here with you both. Well, actually, I'm not really with you both, but we're here together through Zoom. So it's nice to see both.
Connected via technology.
That's it.
Coast to coast. So let's start off by rewinding a little bit back to 2019, December of 2019. You're serving as the interim director of the School of Visual Arts, and it's announced that after a national search, you were selected to fill the top academic position at the college. Congratulations. You move into that role January 2020, a year ago, have 2 months of normal before normal kind of gets put on its ear. And as we kind of get into the depths of the pandemic, for you both professionally and personally, what was kind of going through your mind?
It's great, great question. So what was going through my mind was, what do we do? You get mentally prepared to take on a role, and you have anticipation for what might play out, and some projects you have in mind. So what went through my mind was, what do we do? Let's figure this out. Let's develop a strategy to respond. And what I did quickly was put together a couple of teams. First of all, there was we called it the crisis team. At that point, the pandemic is in front of us, and it's this crisis of sorts. We had to scramble. You might remember, Emma, I think it was the week of spring break was when we were able to make this shift from completely in residence instruction to remote instruction. And so during that week, figuring out how to shift courses to remote, what affordances we needed to tap into with technology, what things we couldn't do. So we put together this crisis team with representatives from different parts of the college, certainly the leadership, but there were other members of staff and faculty in that role. We had to quickly determine room capacities and how are we going to distribute PPE and just all sorts of responsibilities that there was no way to ever prepare for it. So had to rely on the people around me, and we really came together as a leadership team, I think, because it was a joint effort. We really had to respond, it's one of those things where you can't prepare for it, but you've actually been preparing for it for a long time, knowing that there has to be a way out of this, or there has to be a way through it. And as you both know, as artists, as designers, there are multiple ways to respond to any given question. Which one seems to be the approach that works best, and then along the way you make the adjustment. So short answer of that long answer is, what was going through my mind? What are we going to do? We'll figure it out. And actually, we will figure it out is kind of the way we did it. So,
which is great. That's like you said. I mean, I think that's the challenge of every creative is, figuring out the most impactful solution to the most puzzling problems that are out there. So that's a great one.
That's it. Yeah.
Challenged me and challenged my brother and I always look for the best things in the worst situation. And I use that all the time. But I was just curious, in regards to everything that happened in the last year, what was like the biggest thing that you really had to overcome, like mentally, and what is the best thing that you can take away from it?
The best things in the worst situation.
Yes.
Wow, what great advice. Great advice. Let me start with the worst thing. Being away from people physically. So you walk into a meeting or you walk to class. Part of that experience are the conversations that you're having with people on the sidewalk, as you're walking to class, going up the steps, sitting down, settling into your seat, reconnecting with your classmate who you hadn't seen for a couple of days. And that's gone. That's gone, right? In some ways. I mean, certainly the substitute is then you might be texting your friend as you're, the minutes before class, but that's not the same thing. Or for faculty or staff or administrators, sometimes, we're at a meeting, you get to a point in a conversation, you think something's resolved, but there's still a little bit that isn't. The meeting breaks up and you just walk around the table and you lean over to that person and you chat about the issue and it's done. That's really tough to do in this respect using Zoom. You can use the chat feature. That will also get you into trouble. If a private chat goes public, that's not so good sometimes. So the toughest part for me, Emma, is being away from the people. A lot of work happens in the hallways. A lot of interaction is body language, right? You're in a crit, you put your photos up on the wall, and you put them on, you turn around and you're talking about them, you're listening to people respond, and you know who's paying attention and who's not, or you can see if you're making a comment and someone's on the receiving end and their body language kind of tells you, okay, I need to modify the way I'm sharing this constructive feedback. Zoom is tough. You all don't know I have tap shoes on and I'm actually tap dance. No, I mean, you can't see what else is going on. So there's the body language piece. So what's the worst part? Missing people. The best part, my gosh, you know how amazingly, incredibly innovative students and faculty and staff in our college are. They're incredible. They are incredible. I guess it was mid-spring. Mid-spring for me is like midway between when we started in COVID and the end of the semester. That's mid-spring to me. I said something like, the resilience and resourcefulness of the college is inspirational. And I must have said that phrase a couple of times. It ends up on our internal intranet. People picked up on that. And I meant it each time I said it, I still mean it. How do you take a theatrical performance series and within 7 days have to revamp what you're up to, put some things online, streaming video? We had to figure out how to do that. There were people who had to make complete changes to their curriculum in terms of the physicality, the tactile components. Those things are gone. How do you engage audiences who can't be together? That's part of the joy of going into a theater, is to be around people and enjoy that same experience. One of the best pieces was to watch faculty, members, staff, students figure out how we can do this amazingly difficult task with innovation, with a little bit of magic, creativity. We pulled it off. There's so many examples. But in general, that was it. Just seeing the amazing stuff that people can do when they really need to.
One of my favorite things to talk about during this whole crazy reality that we're in is that this year has been the year of silver linings and perspectives. Is what I've always kind of tried to kind of press on people, trying to kind of spin a positive on a negative note. And as a proud father and a proud alumni, to kind of echo what you just said, two things that were validating to me that Emma had landed in the right spot was the Eisenhower parking deck performance that went viral, that some of my clients were picking up and posting, saying, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And I'm like, that's my school. but then also seeing Emma kind of innovate on her own and doing Zoom photo shoots, that as she was going through the semester, she was actually shooting her computer of a model that was in New York when she was sitting in Oregon. So I think that there's, those kinds of innovation tales, I think are really kind of telling. And I really hope that's what, outside of the human toll that all this took, I really hope that those kind of innovations, those steps forward, really kind of stick with us, as we kind of go along.
Yeah, I hope so too. And Emma, I'm imagining. Well, first of all, where did that come from? That your approach come from? Was that something that you and your professor and classmates came up with, or this was something that you developed? Can you say a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So that was in about March, and I think everybody has their own tale of what March looked like to them. And March 2020 is this crazy month. And so, as a photographer, I went from my freshman year in the dorms, getting the experience, football games, everything, right? Living in a dorm, going to classes, to all of a sudden not being able to go back, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's the pandemic, and we were really good about things and staying in quarantine, and everybody was scared. And that need for me to keep creating didn't go away. And so, I do a lot of portrait stuff, so I'm in contact with models quite a bit. And so, every photographer, and especially kids, in my major, did a really good job of kind of putting their own spin on the pandemic in a photographic way. So like my thing was, I had been seeing these Zoom shoots, so I can't take full credit, but I decided, you know what, here's a model that I love working with in person. I know that she's going to be flexible enough to set up her laptop in her tiny room at home. And if I give her some direction, okay, maybe tilt the screen up this way. And I'm sitting here with my camera, okay, maybe tilt it this way a little bit. And I was able to, come up with some really cool photos and just kind of something that captured the moment that we were in. And so that was a really cool opportunity for me, kind of going off of what you said, to be creative in a new way, be creative in a 2020 way. So that's kind of the rundown of that.
I like that. I like that. And all across the college, there were students who were doing that, taking an assignment and being creative in a new way, shifting it, making an adjustment, and the professors pay attention to that, right? And some of them shift their curriculum or shift the assignment for subsequent, for this semester based on what the students were doing, right? I mean, this is what we do anyway, but I think, Brian, in response to part of your question, I think we're going to see more of that, where, what the students have shown us in terms of how they've made adjustments or innovations will certainly play out.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So before you were the interim director of the School of Visual Arts, you were a faculty member for 10 years. You
Correct.
had an active studio practice as well as a teaching schedule and research agenda. So throughout my career, I found that being that I started on the bottom and kind of worked my way up, it helped me be a better leader because I had been there. I could speak with a qualifying that having done the things that I was asking people to do, it really did help. Mm-hmm. Do you find that the path that led you to where you are helps you lead the school as its dean?
Yeah, I do. Being a professor is helpful because, at one level, teaching courses, working with schedules, students, there's the ritual of, annual reviews and other things that play out. But as an administrator, I understand the realities and the whys in different ways, right? And I have to enforce or ensure or support things getting accomplished. That can happen. That could happen. You start at one university and then as a faculty member, and then you're an administrator at a different university. But what makes it even more special is here, I knew a lot of the people, I knew the buildings, right? I knew histories. Right. So that piece of it, it made it easier in some respects, but actually more challenging because in some instances you have to remove yourself from maybe the romanticized sense of what is connected there, or kind of the nostalgia, and allow that space to help you take on the role. So all of that, saying all that, teaching, I'm still teaching a class. I couldn't give up this graduate seminar. This will be my last year teaching it, but I really find my home in the classroom. I love talking to students. I love engaging with ideas and theory. So that's going to be something really difficult to give up. The studio practice actually has gone away for the most part. I think COVID really made that decision for me. Without COVID, there'd be a different time formula that I could play out. But with COVID, everything's business of the college and the university has to go on, right? So that fills up the time that you think you have, and you have your family somewhere in there. And then the COVID piece is layered on top of that, and that's constant as well. So some things had to give. The studio practice, the way I knew it, had to give, but it's not gone. It's not gone.
Right.
I'll come back to it. Yeah,
absolutely. Just on a shelf for now. That's fine. No
it's
one's
on a shelf for now. That's it. Yeah. But one last thing about your question: being a faculty member and someone who engages in studio practice in addition to the writing that I do. The way that my art practice had evolved, it became participatory, collaborative, socially engaged practice, right? I was through public performance work, public pedagogy, worked on these ceramic water filters that enable us to take water that's filled with waterborne disease and render that water potable, but working in a collaborative space. Or doing the research that I've been doing, the written research. I like writing with people. I like researching with people. So it's that collaborative piece. I bring that, at least I try to bring that to this leadership role. I like to see what other people are thinking. Sure. And we opened up today, and I said, essentially, we will figure it out. We're going to get through this together. You bring a group of people together, and you sort it out. And when you have that shared or distributed approach to responding to problems, you're going to get through it, and you'll come. There will be ideas that emerge, not that ideas that will emerge that you couldn't have constructed on your own. They could only have been constructed because of those collaborative conversations.
Absolutely.
So switching gears a little bit, even if we could just completely ignore the pandemic in the last year, if we could just act as if COVID didn't happen, there's still a lot that happened in 2020, and the world has changed quite a bit in the last year. You have been a strong and essential voice on societal issues, and being the dean specifically gives you a much broader platform for that kind of message. So currently, we're having this conversation at the end of January 2021. What are your hopes or even your plans for leading the college through the coming year related to issues of equity, inclusion, and community?
Great question. Yeah, so we are talking in the last week of January. We have a new president and vice president and a new administration forming in DC. The conversation around the peaceful transition of power, I'll put that in quotation marks, which we have, the country talks about or has talked about for a while, has been called into question. So the social issues, the social conversations, the political conversations are around us. Not that they were ever not around us, but they're much more visible and much more present. Racial issues of racism or racial inequity are present. Global warming, climate change. I don't think we can make art or engage in the practices in our college by ignoring those issues. Not that all of the work we do has to focus on any of those or all of those, but I can't see us as a college doing the work that we should be doing. I'll get back to that in the present moment by ignoring those issues. The work we should be doing, what I mean by that is, as artists, as designers, as educators, as historians, the work we should be doing is to help or provide space for or enable people to explore what it means to be human through the symbolic and cultural modes that we use to communicate. Building spaces, building experiences, constructing objects or images, uncovering ideas or making connections. And we do that through the visual, we do it through the performative, we do it through the embodied ways. So going forward, I think there's so many things that we can do. For example, and we've already started some of these, Emma. One is scholarships, educational equity scholarships. The president of the university, President Barron, stood up some money, and essentially it was a challenge, but it was an encouragement for matching scholarships. So the educational equity scholarships, if a unit puts up so much money, he would match it. And we stood up 6 scholarships.
That's great.
Five or 6. I'll have to check the stats. We'll have to do some fact checking there. But the idea is, that's another thing out of 2020, right? Fact checker.
Right. Yeah.
So
we'll take this one though. No, trust me, we'll take this kind of fact checking any day.
Please.
Please.
So here's the thing. If we had scholarship that would help students who were in financial need, right? Which is what you would think many scholarships do. And then 2, their presence would help diversify the student body or the campus by, in different identity modes, race, gender, class, national origin. And people responded, and we were able to stand up these scholarships that can go to students across the college, right? So education, so equity is important, not equality, not making everything equal, but providing support in places to provide equity. So people who don't have access have a mode of access to achieve. In that space, for several years, there'd been a conversation about equity, diversity, and inclusion as a construct. I've been pushing, and you may have read some of the things I've written, Emma, pushing this idea of shifting the culture and making more visible and active ideas of anti-racism, not just saying we're not going to be racist, but saying we are active, not saying I'm not racist, but saying I'm actively working against racism. So using language like anti-racism, anti-bias, not that I'm not biased, I'm anti-bias, I'm working in those ways. So part of doing that is shifting the language we use in policies and in documents so that it becomes part of our vocabulary. One of the things I like to say that I borrowed from a mentor and a colleague many years ago. Her name is Dr. Vesta Daniel. She was a professor at Ohio State, at the Ohio State University. She said, here's a quick definition of culture. Culture is the way we do things around here. Culture is the way we do things around here. So what that says to me is everyone has a culture. Wherever you're from, you do things wherever you're from, and the way you do things there is part and parcel and helps to define your culture. If you take that verb, do, out of that sentence, you put in any other verb, that's part of your culture. Culture is the way we talk to our parents around here. Culture is the way we dance around here. Culture is the way we love. Culture is the way we explain what we value around here, right? So the culture of the college is part of this next set of goals here. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, part of that culture is about who who enters and becomes part of the college, not just based on what they look like, all right, but it's also about the work that they do and the ideas that they're interested in, and the pieces that they can add to what we have to make us more than what we are, which then might translate into better. But the more complexity and the breadth that we can bring, I think, is important. So in terms of the people that we hire, the students that we admit, it's about that. That's about the culture, right? The culture is the way we expand what we are around here. So I could keep going. That's the great question. I could keep going, but let's
no, that's fantastic. And I think it's one of those things that for me as a parent, that again, it's like, I think we all have, to a certain degree, a love of the schools that we've gone to and everything like that. So I was a very easy sell that, as we were taking Emma around to different schools, that she, finally landed on Penn State. And by the way, she's got a great poker face because we didn't know where she wanted to go. I mean, we were all over the country trying to find her landing spot. And after visiting, Happy Valley, we were sitting in the airport waiting to fly back to Oregon. We said, okay, if everybody comes back right now and says you're in, where are you going? And she's like, Penn State. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. So, but that's me. And so I think that, again, my pride in school comes from basically everything you just said, is that this idea of being on the forefront of that kind of inclusion, the culture that becomes almost like a patina on the university that becomes very accepting of everybody. Mm-hmm. And becomes empowering to everybody there to want to enhance that. And I think that to me is a wonderful kind of, I guess if I were to talk to somebody who had a kid who was interested in the arts, that it would be a no-brainer that I would say, oh yeah, well, I mean, look at Penn State. Mm-hmm. But do you find that there are any other challenges that you run up against in the art world trying to convince people to come to Central Pennsylvania outside of a more urban setting type thing?
Yeah, great question. Well, I guess an unavoidable challenge is tuition, right? It's kind of an expensive place to study as a student. Not that other universities don't have that same challenge, but that's one that we face. We're quite aware of that. And so, again, it gets back to those scholarships that I was mentioning before. So the tuition piece gets addressed in kind of as a default challenge for just about any university. The urban piece. So you think about you think about the number of galleries, museums, or performance spaces, or architectural firms that are within a stone's throw of wherever you're standing, if you're in New York City or Philly or Seattle, right? That we don't have that density of those examples here. So that becomes a tough sell for some folks. How can you make art? How can you be connected to the arts in the art world here in Central Pennsylvania? It's very easy. We have an amazingly vibrant arts culture here. It's maybe the scale is smaller, but it's no less robust, and it's no less nationally and internationally acclaimed. One of our distinguished professors, Velvet Brown. If you don't know her, look her up. Again, we were just talking about the very late January, a couple weeks ago, we had the inauguration. She was part of an ensemble who played during or with the inauguration program.
Excellent.
Right. So we have an internationally recognized tuba professor and musician and scholar. We have actors, people in theater, folks in our history. We have architects who are designing buildings and spaces, landscape architects. They are known across the country and around the world. We have them here. To me, that's the challenge, is helping people see Penn State as that. Penn State's known as, that's the football school. It's the land grant, used to be the farmers high school, right? So those are great legacies to have. Those are amazing accomplishments that the university's been able to put forward. We have a strong arts and design culture here as well. So part of the challenge, I guess what I'm getting to is continuing to elevate that, continuing to project that, and let folks really see that. And once they get here, I don't know, Brian, I understand that once students get here with their parents and they take a look around, they figure out this is a good place to study art. At least so I'm told.
Yeah, it worked in our household. That's for sure.
So those are some of the challenges. But the other thing I'll add to that is, as I was mentioning, the lack of galleries and museums in close proximity. We have this incredible Palmer Museum of Art that is the largest art museum between Philly and Pittsburgh, where plans are underway to build a new art museum out at the Arboretum. So that I think you'll be graduating just about that time.
2023?
Yeah, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, if not, stick around, take some more
around.
classes, get another minor or something. You can see it. So there's that, the Center for the Performing Arts. My goodness, the people that we bring, the challenge again is helping people, making sure people know that's the caliber of arts and design experiences we have here at Penn State.
Absolutely.
And that was one of the things that sold me, just coming from a student's perspective. Obviously, I'm an art major, and as much as I was drawn to football, big stadium, just a big, beautiful campus, as an art student, I also wanted that small art community. And I think that a lot of art majors do want that too. Mm-hmm. So looking back at it, one of my favorite things that I'm missing currently is right before my class in the Forum, I miss walking through the Palmer. That's my thing. And when I saw that they were reopening, I think it's February 10th, right, I did a little happy dance because...
Oh, did you really?
Oh my gosh. I'm also an art history major. So the Palmer also holds a special place in my heart. But anyways, so not only do we have the Palmer, but we have these great gallery spaces too, where, students can still show their art, whether that's Zoller or, why am I blanking?
Well, you have the hub galleries.
The hub galleries, right? Beautiful spaces. And then, why am I blanking? What building did you have your office in?
And we have the Patterson Gallery.
In the Patterson. I have a class there, one school. Anyways, I'm blanking. Anyway. And Patterson. I like, that's kind of like my favorite one. Mm-hmm. But anyways, what do you think that those sorts of like in-person, whether it's galleries or performances, what are you thinking that that's going to look like in the next coming year because of COVID? And like, what do you think that the next generation of arts and architecture students are going to have to deal with or have to look forward to? What are those experiences going to look like, I guess?
Yeah, great question. So I think a good majority, or maybe not a majority, a good amount of those experiences will look like they did before, right? Patterson Gallery, you need walls or pedestals or a place that is weatherproof to exhibit work. So those spaces aren't going to go away. But I think, and it's very much connected to something you said earlier, Emma. We were talking about how you made some adjustments to your own photography practice and being able to take these portraits remotely. I think we're going to carry forward some of the things that we've seen, and people will start making work because they know they can do it this way. So here, let me give you a couple of examples. In the spring, we figured out that with the social distancing, making sure we had to de-densify classrooms and studio spaces in music, you couldn't have everybody in the same place. You need to have the air exchange. There were all these regulations, right? We worked out this 30 minutes in the space and then 30 minutes away so the air could cycle out. But you still need a place to practice, or you still need a place to rehearse, a place to perform. What if we had tents? What if we just put up some party tents? That's a crazy idea. Yeah, it's crazy, but let's do it anyway. So we hustled, and I think in 3 or 4 days, one of our members of our college, staff members, went out and surveyed these different areas on campus, and then in the arts district, we figured out which ones were most viable, and the ones we could afford. Proposed it to the provost. He said, "Go for it." We put these tents up, right? I don't know if you experienced the tents, right? So we had one at Sova, we had a couple near the theater and the music building. Hearing music outside on purpose, right? Intentionally, we had people from other buildings that are not part of our college contact us and say, "That is so wonderful to hear music. Are you going to keep that going?" Well, why wouldn't we now? We know we can do it. After the pandemic, I want to see music performed around campus. I think it would be great. Or the Glee Club and the choir practice, rehearsals have been in classes and rehearsals in the parking garage at Nittany Lion Inn, right? I mean, there's a lot of ventilation, a lot of good airflow. I'm not an acoustics guy, but I'm imagining, it sounds really amazing. But the point is, why not write music to be performed in that venue? Or theatrical performances could take place in spaces that we hadn't thought of, or only because we figured out that the theater was the place to have it happen. Or the ways that students make artwork don't have to be limited to, and not that they haven't explored site specific or environmental work, but now we know that there are other ways of going about things. I don't think we're going to be able to keep that keep that energy contained anymore. I think we'll embrace it and make it happen even more intentionally as we go forward.
I personally, as an alum, I love that there's an arts district. Like that warms my heart.
Mm-hmm.
When the first time I heard that thrown around, I was like, wow, that's amazing, because I think on our when we first met, when Emma was doing her kind of informational tour, we walked over to the visual arts building, and I think I referred to it as the creative speakeasy because of the side entry.
That's right.
So hearing that there's a full-on arts district, to me is wonderful. And I think that it's one of those endearing things that as an alum that becomes super powerful, just as far as that it keeps moving forward, it keeps getting better, it keeps growing, it keeps flourishing. But to the alum that may be watching right now, what would you encourage them to do? Because I do what I can do from afar, from across the country and everything like that. I do what I can do. But for other alum from the school, what's the answer the call type moment right now, as we stand in 2021, to kind of spread the word that you kind of referred to earlier about all of the good things that come out of the school, and why it should be a no-brain referral to bring more kids into the Penn State art scene.
Yeah. So essentially the question is, what can other alumni do to be part of to continue their relationship with the college? Yeah,
absolutely.
So one thing, Brian, is many of our majors, graphic design, landscape architecture, some others, have an internship requirement. Alumni can offer, if their business or if their workplace has an internship program or is interested in setting one up, they could partner with us to offer some internship experiences for students. I think that's one direct way where they could help. I mentioned earlier the scholarships and the tuition piece. That not everyone can afford to put down big stack of money to help people out, but giving just a little bit every so often is really helpful. And when you see you receive alumni news or read some of the newsletters that we send out, and we acknowledge that students are achieving certain things, maybe winning awards or getting into exhibitions or performances, and they are a scholarship recipient, and there's a specific name of the scholarship. If people are giving to that scholarship, they see the fruits of the results of their giving. Another thing that folks can do, that alumni can do, that in some ways is maybe even more valuable than the scholarship piece in some respects, is to offer to be a mentor to a student, right? And that could happen while they're a student currently taking classes, or when people graduate, right? So Emma, you finish your studies here, you graduate, you go wherever you're going to go, you start doing whatever it is that you're going to do. Wouldn't it be great to have a mentor who's in that same line of work in the area, Penn Stater, say, hey, Emma, as I was coming through, or here's some things that you need to be thinking about. You already know you have that common bond and that interest. So being a mentor, I think, would be really a great way to give back. Brian, you're on the alumni, so you're on the college alumni board. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And when did that start for you?
So that started for me, I believe June was when I actually started up with that.
Okay, so that's another way to give back. It's not that we have, that's a gig that has a limited number of spaces for, so it's limited by size. But there's always, every year, there's an opportunity to have a bit of a change of board membership. That's another way to give back. And then I guess the other thing in the bigger sense is just show up. If you can come to campus, do it. If there's an alumni event in the area, go meet other alums, or meet students, current students. Just be part of the conversation, wherever that conversation might be. We never know what can emerge from a conversation. So
that's great. Yeah, and I think that was always the allure to me, was. And I think that's how the connection was made for getting onto the board, was my interest in that kind of mentoring type aspect of the relationship, because mine was kind of a non-traditional route of where I ended up, and the zigs and the zags that I took to kind of get there. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a part of me that likes the fact that I know that not everybody's route is a linear one. So for the outliers, the zigzaggers like myself, I've always been trying to, if you have anybody, send them this way. It can be done. So.
See that, but Brian, that's such an important narrative and such an important example to share with people, that there are probably more zigzaggers than straight liners.
Oh yeah.
Right. But that's not the narrative that we hear most often. Go to school. There's a major. Here are some jobs that will happen after that major. That seems like a straight line piece, but that's not always the case. As a matter of fact, people take all kinds of circuitous routes. Well, I have more curves in my route. Yours are zigzags. Whatever the angular or change of direction is.
Yeah, we broke into different axes on mine. It wasn't just X and Y. We were going Z. So just all over the place.
All right, so 3-dimensional and 4-dimensional movement. But the point being, just showing up, offering to provide, example, experience, advice, your time. We'll take it. We'll find a way to put it to good use.
Perfect. There it is. The call to the alumni. All right. Well, you've survived our questioning. But of course, we can't leave you without a classic round of Capel where we throw the curveball. So this is the lightning round that we'll be entering into.
All right, bring it on.
For this, coast to coast battle, what we encourage you to do is say the first thing that comes to your mind, gut reactions only, no thinking, no in-depth answers. We're just going to throw this out. There's nothing wrong, no wrong answers, but we will laugh at you either way. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fire a bunch of questions at you. You take them as they come, and we'll go to it from there. Good luck. Prepare yourself. Let's go.
All right.
Your first question is, what is your favorite flavor of Creamery ice cream?
Death by chocolate.
Well done.
Good
Special place or favorite place on the Penn State campus?
Inside the Palmer Museum in the ceramics collection Gallery.
Well played.
The best pizza in town.
Ooh, best pizza in town. It wants to be. Ooh, that's uh this is not an easy question. It would have to be, let's go with home delivery. Nope, tied with Highway Pizza. Highway Pizza home delivery and Fascia Luna Highway Pizza and home delivery for a three-way tie.
Wow, like it. I like it. I like it. All right, so question, favorite place that you would go when you were a student, is it still around or not?
Yes and no. Here's the answer. The Creamery is still around, but it's not in the same place it was when I was a student.
No, it's not.
When I was a student, I think it was where you remember it, Brian.
Yep.
You ready for this, Emma? The Creamery, when I was a student, was in the building where my office is now, in Borland.
Oh, that makes sense. Because there's a cow on the outside, right? There we go. It all makes sense now.
And it was a lot smaller.
It was a lot smaller.
It was a box of glass. That was about it.
Yeah. So the Creamery, favorite place.
Your next question is, what is your favorite specific piece in the Palmer's permanent collection?
Wow.
It's a tough one.
Okay. My favorite specific piece in the Palmer's collection.
Yes.
Okay. It's one of the newest ones, and it is a work by Roberto Lugo. So 2 years ago, I want to say, Roberto Lugo, he's a ceramic artist. He earned his MFA in 2015, I believe. The Palmer purchased one of his works a few years ago, and it is in the permanent collection. So can you imagine? You graduate from Penn State, and a few years later, the Palmer buys one of your works. It could happen to you, Emma. Who
That's
knows?
the dream.
Or you could just have something hanging in the Starbucks.
Well, that could happen too. Yeah.
A close second. What's your favorite classroom building on campus?
Favorite classroom building on campus. I took a few classes in Willard. Is that my favorite classroom? No. You know what? It's Patterson. So if you go into the Patterson building, you go up to the second floor. There are two art education rooms. When they redid Patterson, they kept the old wooden floors. Those
nice.
wooden floors, they squeak when you walk on them. They have so much history. And about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when the light is just nice in there, those are my favorite rooms on campus, hands down.
That's fantastic.
308 and 310 Patterson.
There it is.
I'll have to check that out when I'm there. Next question is Penn State squirrels or rabbits? Who wins the cute battle?
Who wins the cute battle?
Yes.
I have to say the rabbits. The squirrels just, it's the rabbits.
They're kind of invasive, they're not even afraid of people at this point.
They're not. And every once in a while, I don't know if this happened to you, but every once in a while you uncover a little bunny nest. Have you ever found a little bunny nest on campus in the spring? Well, you haven't really had many springs on campus.
I have not had a spring. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, it's the
We're
bunnies.
going for the maiden voyage on the spring semester this year.
There you go. Bunnies win the cute animal contest on campus.
Nice. Architecturally speaking, favorite building?
Architecturally speaking, favorite building. I'm going with, wow, these are hard questions. You know what? I'm going to go with an odd answer here. It's going to be the Arts Cottage.
Oh, nice.
It's one of the oldest of those yellow house buildings on campus. And if you look up Arts Cottage, you can do a search and you can see an old and a new, like an original photo, a photo of what it looked like before and a photo of what it looked like now. They kind of splice it together. It's kind of changed over time, and it's a weird, funky old building. I think it's kind of cool. It's cozy and there are other inhabitants besides people in there sometimes, you know, but yeah, it's kind of a funky old building. I like it.
That's great.
What is your favorite Penn State annual event to attend?
Favorite Penn State annual event? It used to be the Palmer Museum of Art Gala.
Hmm.
But my favorite event is commencement. I love wearing my robe. I love smiling faces of graduating students. I love the whole pageantry and the ceremonial piece, even though it's kind of cheesy in some places and it's really archaic and it makes no sense. But at the same time, you know what? People have worked so hard throughout the semester. People have worked so hard throughout the course of their studies. People have worked so hard to get to that place. You got to celebrate. You got to celebrate. And why not get dressed up? Why not make it this big event? And the parents are there, and the families are there, and the guardians, and the loved ones, and the friends. Commencement.
Fantastic. All right, back to food. Grilled sticky, best plain or a la mode?
Ooh, a la mode.
Well done.
The thing that excites you the most about your job?
Learning from the students. Taking things out of the way so students can learn, and learning from the students, being around you and your classmates. That's it.
All right, final question. Most important question of the day. Who's your favorite Capel on the call right now?
Sorry, I think there's a bad connection.
It's a hard question, but there is a correct answer.
Okay. All right. My favorite Capel on the call is you.